I still remember the sound of chairs scraping against concrete, the way they always did when we pulled them closer together without thinking. Someone had brought a thermos. Someone else forgot the cups, so we passed it around anyway. There was nothing special about that afternoon. No celebration. No reason to mark it. Just a few of us sitting there, talking about nothing important, comfortable in the way you are only when you don't feel the need to explain yourself. That memory comes back to me more often now. Not because it was extraordinary, but because it was so ordinary. Because at the time, I didn't know it was already slipping away from me. We were young when we met. Not children, but not fully formed either. We found each other the way people used to, through proximity, shared work, shared hours. We didn't choose one another carefully. We just stayed. And staying, over time, turned into something solid. Those men knew me in ways no one else ever quite has. They saw me before I learned how to present myself. Before I polished my opinions. Before I learned which parts of myself were acceptable to show and which were better kept quiet. With them, I didn't have to perform competence or confidence. I could be unsure. I could be tired. I could be quiet without anyone asking what was wrong. We shared long stretches of life that didn't feel meaningful until much later. Early mornings. Late nights. The kind of laughter that comes from being worn down together. We didn't always talk about big things. Sometimes we just sat in the same room, each doing our own small task, the silence between us thick and friendly. They knew my stories before they had endings. They heard my complaints before I knew how to turn them into jokes. They were there for the versions of me that existed only briefly, before responsibilities hardened everything. Friendship, back then, felt permanent. Not because we said it out loud, but because there was no reason to imagine it ending. We assumed we'd always find our way back to the same places, the same conversations. We assumed time would bend around us. Life, of course, doesn't do that. The drifting didn't start with a disagreement. It didn't start with a single missed call or a moment of disappointment. It started the way erosion does, quietly, invisibly. Someone moved a little farther away. Someone got married. Someone else had children and learned a new kind of exhaustion. We adjusted at first. We made plans further in advance. We forgave cancellations. We laughed about how hard it was just to get everyone in the same place. We told ourselves it was temporary. That once things settled down, we'd pick up right where we left off. But things never really settled down. They just changed shape. Calls became shorter. Updates replaced conversations. We started hearing about each other's lives instead of witnessing them. Eventually, even that slowed. Not out of neglect. Out of momentum. Life moved forward, and we were each caught in our own current. I can't point to a final conversation. That's what troubles me. There was no goodbye. No acknowledgement that something important was ending. Just a last ordinary exchange that didn't feel like the last at all. Years passed before I noticed. The realization came one day while I was trying to remember a story and couldn't quite place who I used to tell it to. I went looking for a number and realized I didn't have it anymore. Not written down. Not memorized. I tried to picture the last time we were all together and couldn't fix it to a year. That was the moment it settled in. I hadn't spoken to some of the people who once knew me best in a very long time. The feeling wasn't sharp. It didn't hurt the way loss usually does. It was duller than that. Heavier. Like discovering a room inside yourself that's been empty for years without you noticing. I started asking myself questions that had no clear answers. Did I stop reaching out first? Did they? Was I replaced by new friendships that fit their lives better? Or was none of that the right question at all? Maybe no one left. Maybe we all just kept walking. I think about how easy it was, back then, to make friends without trying. How shared circumstance did most of the work for us. Now, at this age, friendship feels different. Deliberate. Fragile. Everyone comes with a full life already built, carefully balanced. There's less room for accidental closeness. You can meet people. You can enjoy their company. But you can't recreate shared history. You can't manufacture the years where you watched each other become who you are. That kind of knowing only comes from time, and time no longer stretches the way it once did. What I miss most isn't the activity. It's the version of myself that only existed in those friendships. The man who was known without explanation. The man whose jokes didn't need context. The man who could say, "You remember," and be understood. There's a quiet fear that comes with realizing that version of you may already be gone. Not dead. Just unremembered. I wonder sometimes who holds those memories now. If they ever think of me the way I think of them. If the stories we shared still live somewhere outside my own mind, or if they'll disappear when I do. This isn't grief, exactly. No one died. Nothing was taken. It's more like standing at the edge of something that ended without asking permission. Acknowledging that some connections are not meant to survive every chapter of a life, no matter how important they once were. I don't feel anger about it. And I don't feel blame. I feel something closer to humility. An understanding that closeness is often seasonal. even when it feels eternal at the time. Still, the question stays with me, especially now, when memory feels like both a gift and a burden. Were those friendships supposed to last forever? Or were they meant to carry us only as long as we needed them most?